Hi everybody, this is Jim Graham and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage, streaming live on MMA World and MMA UK Facebook pages. This is our second show of 2018, so thanks again for everybody joining us this week, and if you're a new viewer, a new listener, thanks for coming in and checking out what we bring to the table here in the world of mixed martial arts. So this week's episode, a little lighter than a lot of past week's episodes, but we are going to preview UFC Fight Night 124, or UFC St. Louis. And of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns in the world of mixed martial arts, please comment down below. We'll get to them as the show goes along. And we'll also talk a few headlines that have been happening so far this past week. So I'm going to bring in my co-host, as always, Kayla Beatty. Show. Talking again about UFC St. Louis and major mixed martial arts headlines here on MMA World and MMA UK. Again, please like the page, share, follow, and everything like that, as I welcome in my co-host, Kayla Beatty. And Kayla, how you doing this week?
Hey, Jim. Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm a little under the weather this week,
no.
as we've had a crazy week here in Michigan weather-wise. Last week, I think I've said for the past couple of weeks, we were around like below 10 degrees. Then all of a sudden this week we have hit temperatures not only above 10 degrees, but actually today, right now, it is 51 degrees.
All right.
Which is pretty crazy. And tomorrow, however, it's supposed to get back down to 7.
Wow. Extreme weather changes.
Yeah, and then we also may get up to 6 inches of snow tomorrow evening. So we have that to look forward to this weekend. But how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I think there's just some crazy bug that I guess is sweeping the nation and heading over your way too, because all my friends are sick. I'm good now, but I still have like a little bit of that congestion still that I just can't shake. So hopefully we feel better soon, but MMA still goes on, so we have to too.
Yeah, and anything when you get big drastic changes, my body doesn't seem to like that. So let's get to the matter at hand, though. Let's start right first with UFC St. Louis, and we'll kind of work our way into some major headlines. And again, anybody for watching, if you want to comment down below with any questions, we'll get to them as the program moves along here for about the next hour or so. And again, thanks for tuning in here on MMA World and MMA UK.
So, Jim, I thought before we start previewing the card, I thought it'd be fun. I looked up a few facts about St. Louis.
Okay, shoot, go ahead.
So, did you know that that's where 7-Up was invented?
Where what?
7-Up, the beverage, was invented.
I did not know that.
It was the first American city to hold the Olympics. Cool sports fact.
Which also, I believe, I don't know if it was the first, maybe it was the last, but it was also one of the few Olympics that still had tug of war as an Olympic event.
My God. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, tug of war was actually an Olympic event, believe it or not.
Great team sport.
Yeah.
And then the last fact is that it was where the World Fair in 1904 was held.
Yes.
I thought that was pretty cool, too. So just some facts about St. Louis before we preview the card.
Also, Missouri, of course, is the show me state as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the fans hopefully want a good show there. 13 fights. This is also one of the few FS1 cards where only 4 fights are on the main card.
Right.
And I like that a lot more, honestly, in my opinion, than the 6-fight main card. I just think that's too long. Because the main events now always have to be 5 rounds. And so when you look at potential, you're already there long enough for a UFC event, as it is, in my opinion. But then when you start adding all those commercials and filler stuff in between, and the main card is obviously the fights that typically are bringing you in to the arena, those are the fights you want to see the most. Those are the fights you want to see move quickly. And some fans only show up for the main card.
That's true.
I mean, maybe not so much in a city like St. Louis, obviously, where the UFC's not coming every week. In Vegas, most certainly, that is the case. You get the majority of the crowd show up for the main card. But I like having the 4-fight main card for me, unless it just seems I could maybe see for the big Fox cars maybe doing 6, but I think for FS1, I think 4 or 5. I just think that's the perfect amount. Anyways, I'm getting over semantics here. Obviously, there's also going to be prelims on Fight Pass as well as FS1, which again I always find kind of redundant. But looking at the Fight Pass portion, it's going to be highlighted by Jessica I, as she will make her return to the flyweight division, the division she competed in before signing with the UFC after competing in Bellator. And when she signed with the UFC, a lot of people might not know this, she was actually ranked the #1 female flyweight fighter in the world before signing with the UFC and obviously moving up to 135 pounds to have that chance to compete for the UFC. So in my mind, she's always been an undersized bantamweight. Right. And so, to me, we're actually, I think for the first time, going to see the real Jessica I. And she's taking on, I think, a very solid competitor in Calandria Faria, who's had some pretty good experience in her career. She actually has more fights than Jessica I.
Yeah, she does.
She's 18-6-1, and I think she's taken on some very tough girls in her career. I'm going to double check as far as who she's been taking on, but I know her name's been around there for a while, obviously coming out of Brazil. Yeah, she's fought, not beaten, but she's fought Jessica Aguilar, Kovalkiewicz, Karina Dam. She actually, believe it or not, was supposed to fight Andrea Lee for her UFC debut back at UFC 216. Ended up fighting Mara Romero Barella instead. Did not win that fight, got submitted in the first round, but has already competed once under the banner, and also has taken on Vanessa Porto, Jennifer Maia, Claudia Gadella. She's fought in her career, which date back to 2009, fighting professionally. So as much as I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, Jessica I, she's been fighting bigger girls, she's been fighting maybe you could make a case better competition, fighting in the UFC for a long time. But Faria is not going to be an easy out. And if you really look at Jessica I's career, she hasn't been exactly a girl that's put people away. So it's probably going to be a pretty close fight. On paper, that's what it looks like it's going to be.
No, yeah, all of those names that you just dropped. How did she do against Claudia? I'm just curious.
Let's see here. I actually, let's see. This was back in 2010. She actually got submitted against Gadella and Vanessa Porto. Had a draw against Jennifer Maia. I think she went like 2-1 against Karina Dam. She fought her like 3 times, and then lost to Aguilar and Kovalkiewicz. So obviously, when she's taken on the elite, she hasn't won, but I mean,
she has experience.
Yeah, she does have a lot of experience too. And I don't think that she's going to be intimidated by Jessica I.
I think you're right there. Yeah, that's that. I mean, right there, going over her experience got me more intrigued with this fight. And like you said, it'll just be nice. That's why I'm so excited about this division in 2018. We're going to finally see these ladies competing at their natural weight class. Some of them, like Jessica I.
And of course, I think I really wants to impress, not only because she's on a 4-fight losing streak. I think regardless of the new division, she has a lot to prove. And also, she was actually supposed to take on Paige Van Zandt at one point last year. And somehow Van Zandt ends up fighting on the same card, not against her.
Right.
So you got to believe that is rubbing Jessica the wrong way. And so I think the fact that she took on in what some people would call a lesser opponent, or at least for sure a lesser name, in Carla and Faria, if she can go in there and make a statement and show, hey, I would have done this to Paige, I think that's going to have a little bit of a chip on her shoulder, knowing that Paige was kind of ducking her a little bit.
Right. There's another person on this card that's a little bitter about where he was placed on the card.
And who's that?
Well, if you want to make that transition.
You're going to tease it. Okay, I got you.
No, I mean, that's a nice transition to get to the prelims, because I was talking about Michael Johnson.
Absolutely. Also, just to tell everyone what's on the prelims, which start at 6 p.m. Eastern on UFC Fight Pass. 5 Fight Pass fights. That's a lot of Fight Pass fights. They usually don't have that many. But we're going to start in the featherweight division. Mads Burnell against Mike Santiago. And then it's going to be Danielle Taylor against J.J. Aldrich. Then we have Kyung Ho Kang against Guido Canetti, which is funny. That sounds like the most Italian name you've ever heard of, but it's supposed to be dudes from Argentina. So that completely throws me off. Then we have Talita Bernardo against Irene Aldana. That's in the women's bantamweight division. Of course, the aforementioned Jessica Ai versus Faria. Then heading to the FS1 prelims, we have longtime veteran Thiago Alves. He's going to be taking on Zach Cummings. Zach fighting in his home state. Him, along with Tim Elliott and James Krause and Megan Anderson, all train there at Glory MMA and Fitness, which is, I think it's a little closer to Kansas City, but obviously still closer than where Thiago Alves trains in Coconut Creek, Florida. So obviously a lot of people are going to be excited to see kind of the home state guy there in Zach Cummings. Then we have Matt Frivola against Marco Polo Reyes. A lot of people like Polo Reyes. He's definitely one of the exciting prospects in the 155 division. The dude, I think, has 6 or 7 wins by knockout, if I'm not mistaken. The UFC website said 86%, but I don't know what that is out of out of 8 victories. So I think it's at that point it's 6 or 7. I'm gonna have to double check for the exact numbers, but I don't know a lot about his opponent, Matt Frivola. He is undefeated, however. Let's see. Oh, he has 6 knockouts. 6 knockouts with one decision and 1 submission. So,
okay. These guys
very excited for that matchup. And then we have the aforementioned James Krause. He actually will be fighting back at 155. Of course, he was on the Ultimate Fighter Redemption series, fighting up at 170. Obviously, he almost made it to the final that season, fighting up a weight class. And I thought, I wonder if he'll stay, because he looked pretty good.
And he said that was his natural weight, that he's usually walking around 190. So he likes to, unnatural weight, but that's the weight he prefers. So it is interesting. He moved down.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's maybe he's going to give it one more go at 155, or maybe he feels like that's going to give him the best chance to have another run at the title. I don't know. I think with the guys, especially from 155 moving up to 170, we've seen a lot of guys have success. Donald Cerrone was finding some success. Obviously, Javier Dos Anjos is finding some really good success.
Right.
And obviously, Jorge Masvidal has also been really successful. So, and this is a guy that's 74 inches. So I think is that 6'2", right? 74 inches. I think he's 6'2". That's a big lightweight, even at welterweight, 6'2". So I'm interested to see how he does, because Alex Way is a guy that's competed at 145 pounds. So you can make a case that, all right, maybe he's a little bit of an undersized lightweight.
Yeah.
Obviously, both these guys actually train in Missouri, so this will kind of be a Missouri battle right here. I just think it's interesting because I think had he not had that run at 170, we'd be, he lost to bigger guys. But since he almost won the whole thing, it kind of is surprising to me that he is making that move back down to 15 pounds.
Yeah, no, I've thought when I saw initially that he was on the card, I assumed it was at 170, just the way he was talking in interviews post-fight. But we'll see. We'll see how he looks. And maybe he's noticing that division's finally going to have some momentum going, this year. So maybe he wants to move back down. I mean, 170 is pretty stacked, so it's hard to break into that top 10.
And maybe also that run at 170 maybe has helped him adjust his weight cutting and training to 55. Maybe that's helped him, kind of, because I know after the show, I think he did some training with the fellas out there, along with Tim Elliott, at the Bang Muay Thai Muscle Farm facility there in Denver, Colorado, in addition to still training, obviously, in Missouri. But I wonder if that also kind of had maybe something to do with it too, because obviously training at that elevation, different coaches, different perspective, maybe that also kind of lended his talent to one division over the other.
Yeah, Hopefully someone will ask him so we can get an answer.
And then speaking of moving down, another guy originally from the St. Louis area, the menace Michael Johnson.
Yeah,
I'm going to be honest, Kayla. I don't like this move, to
I
be
don't
honest.
either.
Michael Johnson moving down to 155 pounds against Darren Elkins. I don't know. I always thought that he was a pretty good-sized lightweight. I never thought he was a guy that lost because he was undersized.
Yeah.
So this is kind of shocking to me. Now, even though he's listed almost identically the same size as Darren Elkins, I think you can make a case that Michael Johnson carries a lot more muscle than Darren Elkins, though. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, no, and he was powerful at 155. I mean, doesn't I think, sometimes because he's coming off of two losses, but who are they against? One was Habib and the other one Justin Gaethje, I think. So I mean, two of the
Yeah,
top guys in your division. Don't let that take you away to where you change into a new weight class there. I mean, he had a knockout over Dustin Poirier. He was powerful at 155. I don't know what got in his head or shook him down to change divisions to 145, but most people are thinking it's not a good move. So I don't know. We'll
I,
see.
I don't. I just think he's just going to be too drawn out, and that power and explosiveness we've seen at 155, like you mentioned, like look at that Dustin Poirier fight. I don't see that being there, and I see a guy like Darren Elkins who, I'm going to be honest, he's not a very talented guy, but he's a hard-working guy. And that's the
Tough.
thing,
He's so tough.
what do you always see the old adage in the gyms, right? Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't show up or something like that.
Yep.
And Darren Elkins is the epitome of that saying. So if Darren Elkins can very easily grind out a victory over a guy that has no conditioning. He can do that all day. He's made a career of doing that.
Right.
So that's why not only is this not a good idea for Michael Johnson, he has an opponent almost tailor-made to counteract someone that's not having a great conditioning day or not having a great weight cut. He's like the worst guy to fight in there.
Right.
And he also has the worst tattoo to go up against as well. So I don't know if psychologically that throws you off either. Do you think that would throw you off to see someone come at you with a huge tattoo that says the damage on their chest?
Oh, wait, you're talking about Michael Johnson's tattoo? Or Darren
No, Darren Elkins. He tattooed his nickname on his chest. It says the damage right on his chest now.
Okay, I think now I remember his tattoo. I mean, that would be distracting.
It's awful. I mean, you wouldn't think it would, but you never know. You get in there and you're just like, did this dude really just tattoo that on his chest? Like, of all the things you can get tattooed on your body, and you get that.
I mean,
you know? That makes the gorilla with the crown for Conor McGregor seem like amazing in comparison. You know what I mean? Like
thick ink.
when you look at what you could have got, you're like, well, you could have got a gorilla with a crown on the head. You know? All right. Once again, Jim Graham here with Kayla Bay. Excuse me for the coughing. Trying to keep it at a minimum here. A little under the weather. Let's get to the main card here. Actually, hang on. I want a couple headlines before we get to the main card. I saw that Marlon Moraes and Frankie Edgar got promoted to black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Ricardo. Oh, bless you. You're catching it through the...
I think I'm catching it back. Great.
No, but Frankie Edgar and Marlon Moraes get their black belts from Ricardo. Made, I think, kind of a big deal. I actually thought Frankie already had his. If that...
Yeah.
I didn't know he was still a brown belt. I thought he had already got his. And Moraes, surprisingly, and I would say for a guy this talented, I don't know if it's just because his MMA and striking, really came about, but they actually said he was a brown belt for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Which is an exceptionally long time to be a brown belt. I would say of the belts, as a guy who just started training jiu-jitsu, typically probably blue or purple is typically where you're at the longest before you obviously you get there. So I don't know if he just wasn't training a lot of straight jiu-jitsu, but he obviously has it now, and I think they're both very deserving of the honor. And definitely for Frankie Edgar, I would say that's long overdue. I think he probably should have got that a long time ago.
And good timing right before you are competing for that title shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I wanted to bring this up because obviously he trains, a few minutes away from me here in the Metro Detroit area. Cody Stamen gets his biggest test so far in his young UFC career, taking on top 10 bantamweight Brian Caraway. It's going to be at UFC Triple Deuce over in Las Vegas coming up in March. And this is going to be a big test. Yeah, this is going to be a big test for Cody Stamen. Obviously, Brian Caraway is a guy that he's kind of a tricky matchup. He's not a great stand-up fighter, but has some very good grappling skills. I think he's like 16 and 4 or 5 of those 16 victories. 14 or something are submissions. So he always presents an interesting matchup, especially on the ground. And obviously, he's kind of been a maligned guy because he's not a guy that's been very active. And so I don't know how deserving he still is of being ranked number 7. And obviously, he famously dated Miesha Tate for many years. Obviously now is not. And I don't
he's not the father.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Who knows? I'm not going to get into that. But I don't know if this is his first fight without her being in his corner. So I wonder if that will any have sort of difference on him mentally or prep, going in there obviously with some different people backing him. So I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. And obviously for Caraway, he needs to be more active because his name has kind of been floated out there really for the last 2-3 years of, if he can do this guy or if this guy fights Caraway, but it's like he doesn't really seem interested in going any further. So not only anything with Miesha Tate, I kind of always question where he's kind of been mentally because I feel like he's just kind of, I don't know, if you really have aspirations to fight at the sport, shouldn't you really be trying to go for the title? I feel like Brian Caraway's not doing that. It's one thing to try and fail and you're kind of just fighting to fight, but it just seems like I don't know, I think he's going about it completely wrong in my opinion.
Well, yeah, especially if he has a ranking within that top 10, you would think that you're in that spot to start climbing those rankings and get towards that title shot. But at least we see that he is fighting, and maybe 2018 will bring a new Caraway in, a more active one.
Also, UFC champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson just recently went under shoulder surgery, and it was successful. Here's some alliteration for you. And it looks as though he probably will be out. I think the report said possibly 14 to 16 weeks, which would put him somewhere in May or June as far as a return to training. So then we're looking at July, August probably for a fight. So you would imagine one guy by the name of TJ Dillashaw would have already fought at least once in that time.
Let's hope.
Right? At least.
Let's hope so. That's a long time for a belt to be sitting around.
Yeah. Right. Well, we know Dominic Cruz has the hand injury. I haven't heard whether or not that's going to be a quick timetable return. So obviously that's, I think, a good rematch. Obviously Cruz and Dillashaw. Despite getting knocked out, you can always book him against Cody again. And then even though he didn't get that fight at New Year's Eve, Jimmy Rivera is also out there as well. He obviously wasn't able to get that fight with John Lineker or Dominic Cruz or, of course, Marlon Moraes on short notice. And also, you could maybe make a case for Marlon Moraes as well.
Right.
So I think I would say because of rankings, Jimmy Rivera probably should get it over Moraes. And if that's the case, maybe we see a Moraes Garbrandt or a Moraes Cruz to set up the possible next one contender. I know Asuncia's kind of out there too, but he's beaten a couple people, but it hasn't been very exciting. He obviously hasn't put these people away. So I think Asuncia probably needs one or two more to get back in there too. So he's kind of in the mix a little bit. But as far as if they got to book something, not today, but I think soon, I would put my odds on favorite to be Jimmy Rivera.
No, I think so too. And I think just with scheduling, like you said, we don't know we haven't heard yet when Dominic Cruz will be healthy and back in it. And I feel like people want to see that rematch between him and Cody, so why not, have that while they're waiting to get their next title shot with TJ. But it's going to be interesting because I would hope that after last year, the UFC is going to be a little bit more strict with how long these champions can let their belts sit on ice and wait. And, if Demetrius Johnson is going through a shoulder surgery, he needs to recover. He's not going to jump in to possibly, defend his title against a dangerous guy like TJ unless he's ready for it. So I would hope that TJ doesn't try to sit around and wait for that super fight.
And then last thing I kind of want to talk about in headlines is obviously Chris Cyborg.
Mm-hmm.
There's been Megan Anderson thrown out there. There's been Amanda Nunes thrown out there. I believe our own Carrie Steller here at MMA World, MMA UK, interviewed another fighter who Cyborg has talked about as well. But I guess the most dismissive she's been has actually been of women's bantamweight champion Amanda Nunes, which I kind of find surprising, to be honest with you, because I don't know if that's a Brazilian thing, if she just doesn't want to fight another Brazilian, or if it's legitimately she doesn't think Amanda Nunes is in her league. But I think Nunes is very much a game opponent for Chris Cyborg. She has notoriously been a fighter that's had difficulties making 135. So you would think not having to cut that 10 extra pounds should help the Lioness out a lot. And you add in that she's a black belt, I believe, in jiu-jitsu and judo, along with the incredible striking skills that she possesses and power, that she would be almost a very similar counterpart to what Chris Cyborg does very well. And I think as far as also pay-per-view and intrigue, it's probably the most intriguing matchup they can really make for Cyborg now that she's already faced Holly Holm and defeated Holly Holm soundly.
Yeah, no, I think the fight is intriguing because of all the things you listed. Technically, how they look on paper, I think that it's an interesting fight. But I do respect Cyborg when she says that she wants to just, finish out her career defending her belt against natural 145ers. If Amanda Nunes is a natural 145er, then great. Vacate your belt and go take this new one over in the new division. I think that some of the champions like Rose, like Max, like Cyborg are trying to stick to that old way of defend your belt, with the contenders that are in your division, the natural people that are supposed to be there, instead of jumping around and trying to hold two belts. Say Cyborg does lose it to Nunes. Yeah, that's great for Nunes. You're the first lady, in the UFC to be able to win in two divisions, but will we really knock it off on Cyborg by saying like, oh no, someone finally stopped Cyborg? Well, she wasn't even a natural 145er. I just don't see how Cyborg's going to gain anything out of this fight besides it being one that might sell.
Well, right now, there's technically not like a 145 division. It's just Cyborg. And they're bringing in, like, I almost want to call them hired guns to face her. There's not like a full division. When you go on the UFC, there's not 15 girls that they're ranking right now at 145 pounds. So she is the division. And so they have to build up the division. And the easiest way to fill girls in at 145 are moving up from 135. Not everyone fighting at 135 is best suited for 135. You can make a case that Amanda Nunes is a natural 145-pound female fighter, and that she's cutting too much weight to make that so. And I just think that's a natural thing. It's not like there's a whole division of 30 girls that Cyborg could fight right now. That's not the case.
Well, her argument is that she posted a whole lineup of other girls that are just in other promotions waiting to be, transferred over to the UFC. One being the lady that Carrie Steller was interviewing. That was her number one that she was gunning. Why isn't, I think her name's Pam, I want to say. Pam? We'll have to look it up. But that's what I'm saying is there are ladies out there that could be 145ers in the UFC. The UFC is just choosing not to, employ them.
Well, that's the thing. They got to build up the division. They can't, and I think it would belittle Cyborg's run and also belittle UFC title if it hasn't already been belittled enough over this past, year or two, if they just start bringing in random women who have never fought in the organization, who nobody knows, and she's probably just going to smash.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't think – I think that kind of takes away – and then people start to get disinterested in Cyborg because then she's just smashing people. And people go, well, she's going to win. Why would I tune in? Why am I paying the $60 when I know she's going to win?
Right.
When you're bringing up Amanda Nunes, people go, she could lose.
Mm-hmm.
That draws intrigue. That's what makes that fight exciting. And that makes what people want to spend $60 of their hard-earned money to go and see. And so, while I'm not saying it has to be the next fight for her, I think it has to happen this year. Now, of course, Nunes is the 135 champion. She does have obligations there. But at least Nunes, unlike TJ Dillashaw, Nunes has now defended her championship belts twice.
Mm-hmm.
She took on Shevchenko, and she has also beat Ronda Rousey. So it's not like she hasn't defended it at all and is just now clamoring to move up like TJ's been doing. And obviously, it's pretty much what Conor McGregor did after winning the 145 championship belt. So I find that situation a little different because right now, if you were to say, who is Amanda Nunes going to fight at 135, wouldn't you say it's not really decisive? In my opinion, I think it probably should be Raquel Pennington. I think she's done the most recently, but we haven't seen Pennington since she defeated Miesha Tate, and that's now over a year ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know. As much as I say, Pennington should get it, you can now say, well, the girls have been more active in this past 14 months or so, and they may have passed her. Now, if it wasn't for how many times they booked in scheduling, Valentina Shevchenko, in my opinion, should get a trilogy, even though she's lost the first two, because in my opinion, I think she won that last one. But, the UFC is not going to let that happen. They already did it twice. They booked it, 3 or 4 times. She's now going to fight at 125. But other than that, it's not like there's a clear number one contender at 135, and I think that's another reason why this fight with Cyborg makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I think both of those divisions need a little attention and need some people to step up and, like you said, just be more active. And that way it's more clear, like, this person deserves a title shot. Like you said, build some intrigue. I like the fight against Cyborg. I really want this year to be about people defending their belts in their divisions. I don't want it to continue, being the circus that it was last year, I guess.
All right, let's get to the main card here for UFC St. Louis after talking some headlines here. It's going to start in the welterweight division as we have Emil Meek, the Viking out of Norway, against the Nigerian nightmare Kamaru Usman, who has been nothing short of fantastic since winning the Ultimate Fighter. And I believe has won every single one of his UFC fights. I think he's 5 or 6-0 in the UFC. Let me double check this. He's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-0 in the UFC, including a very dominant and knockout performance, probably his best performance to date over Sergio Moraes back in September of last year. And other than his first UFC victory, which was to win the Ultimate Fighter over Hayder Hassan by submission, that's his first finish since then. That was 2 years. He had been kind of grinding people out, really dominating with his wrestling. And I think now that he has, 3 or 4 years training with the very talented coach Henry Hoost, what was formerly Black Zillions, I think is now, oh boy, he has a new name. He started his own gym now. It's basically the same staff that was at Black Zillions. I forget what they call it, Tough Guys or I don't know, something like that. It's still down there in South Florida. And I think you're finally starting to see all that training and work with Henry really starting to pay off. And I think we're starting to see a guy that not only is a powerful wrestler, but he's starting to come into a very overall well-rounded fighter. And he's young, he's hungry, and I think that he is a guy to look out for. And I think this is his chance. First fight of the main card, first UFC card of 2018. He's ranked number 10, the highest ranking. I think this is his chance to make a statement in his division and prove that he belongs and that he deserves to be ranked in the top 10 with some of these other very talented individuals.
Yeah, after his last big knockout, he was really, gunning for it, and I think pretty vocal, saying that he wants to start fighting some of the guys in the top 10 to be able to get ranked. And I think, like you said, he had all of those wins, but they were by decision. That I think he's starting to realize the more that he gets a finish and like you said, make a statement, he's going to get closer to being ranked and fight some of those top guys. So he definitely wants to make a statement with this fight. But Emil Meek is not an easy one to beat either.
No, this guy is a very tough individual. He has only lost twice in his career. He's 9-2. He's currently riding a 4-fight winning streak. 3 of those coming by finish. 2 of them are against names people recognize in Husamar Polares and Jordan Meehan, which was his UFC debut. And even though he didn't get a finish in that fight against Meehan, I think after that first round, he thoroughly beat Jordan Meehan. I think a lot of people were surprised at that, especially fighting in Meehan's home country. That was Meehan's re-return to the sport of mixed martial arts. And Emil Meek kind of dashed the fellow Canadians in attendance there at the Air Canada Centre. And, of course, Meehan's re-return. Obviously fought a lot over in Europe before coming over to the United States and fighting in the UFC. And I think he's a guy that is very interesting. He obviously has a great personality. He has a great beard. He has that Viking heritage. He's a very tough guy. But he's really going to have to look out for the wrestling of Usman. And that's really, to me, what this fight is going to come down to. Can he stop the takedown, number one? And if he can't, can he get up quick enough to turn this into a striking? As much as Usman's striking has improved, and I think he's very competent there, the longer it stays standing in at range, the more chances to me Emil Meek has a chance. Because I feel like Usman's top game is so strong, I don't see Meek submitting him from the bottom. I feel like he doesn't have that type of skill set to do that. Not only that, it's going to be difficult to do, even if you have that skill set.
Right.
But I also got to look at conditioning thing too. I don't think Emil Meek's been in there with a guy like Usman who's going to push the pace like that. And so I think while Meek is a tough guy, I think we're going to really see where he's at in his career, where his conditioning is at, where his well-round is at, where his takedowns are at. Because Kamaru Usman, I feel, is going to come right at him and try to break this kid very early and often. We're going to see if the Viking can hold up because he's in for a heck of a fight.
Yeah, no, this is a really intriguing one. It's exciting. Now, wait, was Emil Meek wasn't he the one that had issues in Canada where they were trying to make him shave his beard? Was he that guy?
I didn't hear about that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
There was some fighter that was pretty upset because they were saying he wouldn't be able to fight unless he trimmed or shaved his beard. And I think it was Emil Meek who said, "No, you don't understand. This is like a lot of years growing out this beautiful beard and part of who I am," and was so upset.
Yeah, I've never heard that before, but considering how fickle the Ontario Commission has been, in fact, there was a while there where if you looked at where the UFC went in Canada, they weren't going to Ontario. So it doesn't surprise me that the Ontario Commission was bringing up something like this. That's why the UFC took so many years to come back to that province. And it doesn't surprise me. But I've never heard that before with any commission talking about shaving. I feel like the hair is more of an issue than the beard.
Yeah, there was somebody that had issues with the beard. I'm almost positive it was him. I'll find it and I'll bring it up next week, or I'll send it to you in messages.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think if they made him like braid it or tie it up, maybe kind of like a Mike Beltran,
right?
You know, it would be okay. But I don't think you could.
That would be distracting, being a ground and pound, and then also just having the hair in the face. It's
almost as distracting as that tattoo of Darren Elkins. I don't know which one is worse, to be honest.
Let's hope Darren Elkins doesn't grow out his beard.
Oh, God. Oh, jeez. Though, wait a minute. Though, if he gets the beard long enough, it would cover the damaged tattoo. True. So actually, maybe he should grow it out. I don't know. Okay. All right, let's get to the next fight of the evening. The aforementioned Paige Van Zandt will be making her debut at 125 pounds against a girl who's caught a lot of publicity lately, and that being Jessica Rose Clark, fighting out of Australia. She made her UFC debut on short notice not that long ago down in Australia in her home country, and she was able to defeat obviously one of the biggest stars in Australia in Beck Rawlins via split decision. And I thought she looked, considering the short notice, the opponent, I thought she looked really good. And I think with a full camp now, I think Paige Van Zandt, even moving up the weight class, the less weight, I think she's going to be in for a fight. I think Paige is making the right choice moving up to 125. I think she always had a difficult time making 115, especially in the last year or so. You can definitely tell, she started to add a lot more muscle to her frame and was starting to get, I think, pretty big for the weight class. And for a girl that always was really, I almost biggest asset was pushing the pace and really being in her opponent's face. If you don't have the conditioning to back that up, it's not a very great style of fighting.
Right.
So I think moving up will really complement what she already does so well in the octagon. Now, the thing I kind of question a little bit is she was always a very active fighter as soon as she came into the UFC. This is her biggest time away in between fights. And I wonder, despite being a younger woman, I still wonder, is there going to be any rust? Because she's definitely taking on a very hungry individual who's already beat one known name in the sport. Now with a full camp, I think and ranked number 10. Let's not get that twisted too. She's now ranked number 10. If she beats Paige Van Zandt, you add in the name, regardless of how long she's been out, all of a sudden, Jess is in title contention. I don't think you can deny that. And so I think Paige is really, this is, when they call, like in football, other sports, like a trap sport. You see that game or a trap game and you look at that. I think this is a trap fight for Paige Van Zandt against Jess.
Yeah, no, I think it's just going to be very telling. We've been anticipating Paige moving up. She says that this is where she feels more comfortable and can, like you said, display all of her talents and her style of fighting. So I think it's just going to be telling to see if this is her natural division. The only thing about Jess or Jessica Rose Clark is looking at her history. She has had some. Now, I know this last fight, like you said, she took it on short notice, but she missed weight there. I think there's been 2 other times in her career she's missed weight. So I don't even know if, 125 is her natural division. And it's going to be interesting to see how she looks. Is that extra weight going to benefit her, or is it going to slow her down against someone like Paige Van Zandt that might be feeling comfortable at this weight and able to push the pace, like you said?
That is true, because besides her debut against Rawlings, where, let's see, I'm trying to see if it said what she actually weighed in for the fight at. She weighed in at 128. That was her first scheduled flyweight fight since taking on Reika Amico in 2015. She fought the rest of her career at 135 pounds.
Yeah.
So this was not something that, and she even took a fight, her second ever fight was actually at 145.
So, yeah.
So she's actually competed almost as many bouts at 145 pounds as she has 125. So that's a very great point.
Chris Cyborg's a #1 contender. There we go. We found who Chris Cyborg's next fight should be.
But you got to believe, though, with the full camp, the fact she only missed it by 2 pounds on short notice, you got to believe that will get figured out for this fight against Van Zandt, right? At least that's the hope. Because if she misses weight, even if she beats Paige, but she misses weight, we know how the UFC deals with that. They might actually force her up to 135.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to look out for, too, because it's perceived as though Paige should make this no problem. Like, Paige should have no problem making 125. But another reason I call this a trap fight, again, I mentioned earlier she's kind of ducking Jessica I, so she almost kind of, I hate to say singled out, but she almost picked Jess and almost saying, oh, this is going to be an easier fight. I'm going to take Jessica Rose Clark and not Jessica I. That's another reason why I think it's a trap fight, because she's taking in what her mind is a perceived lesser opponent. And so mentally, you might go in thinking, oh, I should beat this girl no problem. And anytime you expect to win, sometimes when you end up losing.
Yeah, it can bite you in the ass.
All right, let's get to the next fight of the evening. My goodness, should this be a fantastic fight? I mean, we have the legend, one of my favorite fighters
Yeah.
of all time. I will admit I have several things autographed by him.
Oh, that's cool.
Because he is the phenom, Vitor Belfort, former UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, and he's taking on one of the most dynamic strikers in any division that has ever competed inside the octagon, that being primetime Uriah Hall. Of course, Hall's had kind of an up-and-down career in the UFC. Some fights he's looked really good. Some fights he's looked really bad. It's kind of been a mixed bag of what we've gotten from Uriah Hall. However, his last fight in UFC Pittsburgh, man, that was a performance. That was what we expect from Uriah Hall. You know, that when you see, Uriah Hall, what does he got to do to get, he has to do that.
Yeah.
In his last fight, that's what he needs to do. Now, unfortunately, we don't get to see a 30-year-old Vitor Belfort against around a 30-year-old Uriah Hall. I think that would have been absolutely fantastic. Obviously, you're seeing, a little older, a little slower, doesn't think the hits quite as well, Vitor Belfort, but still a guy that if you give him the opportunity, he will put you away. And to me, for as much as Uriah Hall is dynamic and stuff, I think if you're Hall, you want to drag this thing out into the second or third round. You really want to let Vitor Belfort chase you around. And I think if I was Uriah Hall, I would start out early with a lot of leg kicks. I don't think you're in too much danger of Vitor Belfort taking you down. I wouldn't worry too much about that. I'd be on my bicycle, I'd throw leg kicks, and avoid those power shots. I'd make Vitor kind of get frustrated. And then towards the end of the second round, I start maybe mixing it up, going to the body with those kicks, obviously and then towards the end of the first round, also mixing in that jab, these lighter shots. And then the third round, let's empty that tool basket, okay, that tool belt, the tool bucket, whatever you want to say, tool drawer, empty that. Then start throwing those spin kicks. Let's start throwing the haymakers. Let's get it that way. And if you're Vitor Belfort, knowing that I think this is the strategy to win, I think that's the strategy you expect from Uriah Hall, because if you match brawling, I still think you got to give an edge to Vitor Belfort, so that's why I don't see Uriah Hall trying to do that. But if you're Vitor Belfort, you got to continue to do what you kind of did in your last fight against Nate Marquardt. You got to be methodical, and I think since moving to TriStar, that's the biggest thing I've seen in his game. He's not overextending himself too much. He's not just going for that opening blitz and hoping it works out and he puts the guy away. Because again, he's not 30 years old anymore.
Right.
He doesn't have that ability, and he doesn't have the conditioning that if it fails, that he can fall back on it. It's age. He just can't do it anymore. So I think if you're Vitor, he really has to pick his spots. He has to try to trap and counter. Your Hall being on his bicycle, create some angles, and land that power straight, and look for that, and also try to check and counter the leg kicks when possible. I would say that is the strategy for Vitor Belfort to win.
Yeah, I think out of all of the older guys or veteran guys, I think Vitor Belfort seems to be the one that, most people, I guess, still want to give a shot and still want to see him compete and aren't doubting him so much. And I think it is that move that he made to Montreal to go train there. I think that's because he's not kind of like in denial that he's this old dog fighting these young guys. And but yeah, I think like you said, it's just going to really come down to speed and Uriah Hall going in there with a good game plan. Also, Uriah Hall, he's mentioned this so many times before, he's been his own worst enemy, getting in his own head about his confidence. He said after this last fight that his confidence is, he's finally getting a hold of that. But if Vitor, senses any doubt in Uriah Hall, I think he should also capitalize on that too, maybe put that pressure on Uriah Hall. I know Uriah has also been open about, the passing of his coach, Robert Follis, and how he was really impressed that Tim Elliott, who was super close with Robert, was able to go into his last fight and try and get the win for him. So Uriah says he's going in there with that mindset to kind of get a win in honor of his coach, who passed away. So it's going to be interesting just to see where his mind's at, and how he's going into this fight.
As much as I do think that is a little bit of a factor, Kayla, I would say for a guy that, if you remember when he won his UFC championship, he had that shirt of his sister, who I believe was kidnapped.
Oh, Vitor, yeah.
Down in Brazil.
Oh.
He's had to go through adversity before, and that was during the prime of his career. And he was obviously able to still continue, still fight, still knock people out. So I'm not trying to belittling the passing of Robert Follis, because he obviously was a big part of the mixed martial arts community. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying for a guy who's already kind of had to go through that, it might be a little easier for him, knowing he's already had to go through stuff like that before.
Well, Uriah Hall is the one that was close with
some
Robert.
Other fighters. Say that again?
Uriah Hall was the one that was close with Robert.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I was just saying that's Uriah Hall has just mentioned this week that he's going into this fight with that mindset to kind of almost get this win for Robert, and maybe that's helping with his confidence and focus.
Okay. Now, for Hall, yes, he's definitely been a guy. I think it hasn't been anything physical, physical skills. It's definitely been a guy mentally. And I think coming into that last fight, like I said, not only did he perform well, I think that's a fight most people picked him to lose. Mm-hmm. Christophe Jacot, despite having that loss against David Branch, was considered the biggest rising star in the middleweight division. They thought, oh, he's going to take on Hall, who's a pure striker. He's going to take him down, and Hall's not going to be able to do anything. And that's not what happened. Hall ended up knocking him out and kind of almost resurges his career a little bit with that win. I don't think he would have got cut or anything, but I really think that shows that, all right, he can do this. He has the capability of doing this against anyone in this division. He just simply has to go out there and do it. And so even though taking on an aging guy like Vitor Belfort, I still think this is a big deal for him. This is a big-time fight. And, of course, we all got robbed of that fight where he was supposed to take on Anderson Silva at UFC 198. Yeah. And Silva had the was that a liver or spleen? I forget what happened. Something
like that, yeah.
Happened. They couldn't do it. So this may be the closest we'll get to that, obviously, with Silva probably being done, in his mixed martial arts career after the Kelvin Gastelum, failed test. But this is definitely a really big fight for him, because for Vitor, his legacy is already cemented. Mm-hmm. If he loses to Uriah Hall, it's not that big of a deal. This is not a do-or-die fight for Vitor Belfort. Vitor Belfort is fighting because he likes to fight. That's just what he does now. Whether or not he should retire, probably should. But, that's just what he's doing. But for Hall, this is a really big deal. And if he can get his head right in the game, we could see another great performance from him come Sunday night.
I'm excited.
All right, main event. The Korean Superboy makes his return after his fight of the year against Cub Swanson.
Almost over a year.
Yeah, over a year, against perennial top 10 featherweight Jeremy Stephens, Lil Heathen, who's been around the UFC for an amazingly god-long amount of time. And he's still only like 30 years old, which is crazy. So, obviously, Doo Ho Choi has taken some time off. And I was actually kind of critical of Doo Ho Choi for this fight, because he kind of mentioned that he wants to win the title, then take his 2-year mandatory Korean military service or whatever. His Korean Zombie had to do it. Many other Korean, not just MMA fighters. This has happened in baseball, obviously. A lot of Koreans play baseball, so I heard it there too. But the fact that, like you said, you just mentioned, it's now been 14 months or so since that fight against Cub Swanson. In my opinion, if he would have just taken his military leave there, he'd already be halfway through it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And now he's saying he wants to win a championship, then do it, which to me belittles him getting a title shot. After hearing that, the UFC's not going to give him a shot if he's going to go away for 2 years. That doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. If I was his management team, I think he handled this whole situation wrong, because not only did he use a year of his career where he could have continued fighting, knowing he didn't want to do the military service yet, but he could have then went and did it, and he'd already be halfway done.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like he missed a pretty big opportunity here, Kayla, because he was going to have to do it at some point. Why not do it when you were already going to take a year off anyway? I don't know. I think this was kind of poor man, because now if he wins, now that, now he's going to build a momentum, and now he's going to have to do it, and it could end up derailing his career.
Now, I think from when I was looking into stuff yesterday, I think that I saw an interview where he mentioned he was going to schedule a fight within this last year, but then he had an injury. So I think he was.
Even more reason.
But yeah. And then I think too, he had said in the interview that he watched the fight with him and Cub over 100 times, that loss really upset him. And
I have no doubt it did.
Yeah, and so he said that, he watched over 100 times and was just really trying to get in the gym and work on any, loose screws that he has in his game. But I don't know if it was the injury or if it was just that, he was really taking that loss hard and wanted to come back feeling confident that he could take on, someone like Jeremy Stephens in the main event to eventually try and get that title shot. But I agree with you. It's, if that is your plan, maybe keep that a little secret. Because like you said, why would the UFC throw a title shot at him and have him potentially win just to vacate the title?
It literally makes no sense. And then like I said, even
if he leaves and comes back, we're going to want to see him back and see his return.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just me. Maybe that's me. I'm a guy that likes to plan things out. So to me, you have this fight where you definitely were going to take some time off. I mean, that was a fight that definitely takes some years off your career, okay, against Cub Swanson. So you add that in with, you have this 2-year commitment looming over you. You have to take it at some point. I don't know, what the deadline is. I don't know what age he has to take it by, but I think he's only, 24? Right?
He is.
He's 26. I think you may have to take it before you're 30, so don't quote me on that. That's probably completely wrong. I don't know. Maybe it is. It seems logical to me. Because I, at one time, considered signing up for the Air Force, and they said I had until I was 27. I know it's a different country, but
yeah,
you would think,
I would think that
similar
30
guidelines would exist. So that's what I'm thinking. So he could have already taken that year out, didn't. Now he has it looming, and what's going to be the prime of his career. Again, I think the Korean military should make exceptions for some of these guys and girls, but besides that, all right, let's get to the fight here, because it's just dwelling on me too much, and I'm going to derail the show here. Stylistically, I think the only thing that could maybe slow up the Superboy is if Stephens tries to go into a wrestling mode. Which I think is a very likely scenario. As much as Jeremy Stephens likes to bang, likes to throw home runs, like to mix it up with people, we've never really seen the Superboy get challenged too much with the wrestling. We saw it a little bit in the Cub fight,
right?
But not really. Tavares tried it briefly, but then the Korean Superboy threw 3 punches, and he was done. So it's really hard to say, he's taking on these elite wrestlers and stuff. Well, I mean, he really hasn't. And I wouldn't say Stephens is an elite wrestler. I think he has some wrestling ability. But especially look at his fight with Max Holloway. That's the fight, you think he's going to stand and bang with Max. He didn't do that at all, did he? You know what I mean? And no offense to Max, but Korean Superboy, I think, throws a lot harder than Max Holloway. Max Holloway's not a one-shot knockout guy. He's
right. Yeah.
So if Stephens thought, I shouldn't mix it up with Max, how is he going to feel taking on this dude that can throw 3 punches and end your night?
No, I agree. And I think we even saw in Jeremy's last fight with Gilbert Melendez, not a lot of people were expecting him to go after that leg like he did. And I think that we're so used to Jeremy Stephens' highlight reel of knockouts, but he's someone that's evolving too. Another quote that I feel like is in gyms is, you're never going to stay stagnant. You want to keep growing and adding, more skills to your game. And Jeremy Stephens is someone that is very aware of what, he's been around the sport, like you said, for so long, that he's noticing that he's going to have to keep evolving as a fighter, but have those knockout tricks like he does still, still in his game. But I think that, and he's being very mysterious when people ask, like, how are you predicting this fight? He just keeps talking about how he has a game plan. So that very well, could be that he tries to take it to the ground.
I think so, because he's a guy that's not very shy about mixing words, and saying he's going to knock his opponent out. I mean, this is a guy that has a lot of knockouts over his career. I think what does he have? Well, his record's 26-14. I think he has like 18 knockouts or something like that. He has a lot of knockouts. I know that for a fact. And obviously coming off a very big victory over Gilbert Melendez after losing 3 out of his last 4 before that. Losing to Max Holloway. Yeah, he had the win over Renan Barão, but then he loses to Frankie Edgar and Renato Canero. Again, the Canero fight, a fight where I thought he won, but that wasn't even a spectacular performance from him. So I think having that fight against Gilbert Melendez kind of returned him back a little bit, because I feel a lot of people are like, maybe that's the end of Jeremy Stephens. He wasn't really looking very good. He takes on a guy, despite being older, despite being maybe should have moved down to 145 or maybe should have done it years ago, dominates him. And now he's kind of going back up into that elite territory where he's had trouble in his career historically competing against the elite guys. If you look at his career, he's beaten a lot of the, average to below average guys, but he hasn't really been able to compete against the elite guys. And I think Doo Ho Choi is very close to that elite level. He has unreal power, and I think has shown it against just about everybody. I mean, other than his 4th fight where he lost a split decision, it's been pretty much knockouts. I mean, from 2010 to his loss with Cub Swanson, he won every single fight by knockout. So, I mean,
yeah.
I don't care who you're facing.
Now I'm thinking he should get a title shot.
You know what I mean? It's just, this is a guy you legitimately do not want to stand with. Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, even Cub Swanson, yeah, he won that fight, but let's not get it twisted that he could have very easily lost that fight. Yeah. So I really think, and the thing is, he's a patient guy too. I mean, like I said, he in that Tavares fight, it was towards the end of the first round that he threw those 3 punches. It wasn't like, they touch gloves, boom, 3 punches, out. So this is a guy that's very patient with it too. And I think for Jeremy Stephens, a guy who's kind of been a little bit of a hothead in his career, I think if anybody's going to get frustrated first, it's going to be Jeremy Stephens.
Yeah.
So I think that plays right into the Korean Superboy's hands a little bit. However, the one thing I think is the X factor, Jeremy Stephens has gone 5 rounds before, actually in his fight with Cub Swanson. So conditioning-wise, I would err on the side of Stephens, because Korean Superboy, other than the fight with Swanson and his other loss, which was also a decision, this guy doesn't go very deep in fights. So how will he deal with 25 minutes? He's never had to do that before. And so I think that's a very real factor. And that's why when I think Stephens said, I have a game plan, I think his game plan is to get this into the 4th and 5th round and then try to knock him out. I think he's going to try to drag this out and see if the Korean Superboy can last that long.
Maybe Korean Superboy's been working on his conditioning for the military, and he might have.
Well, I hope so.
I
hope he's been doing something. I hope he hasn't been sitting around.
But no, it's again another intriguing fight, just because we're going to see where both of these guys are at and see them get tested for sure. But I think you're right. I think that if Doo Ho Choi can frustrate Jeremy, I think that's where he's going to be able to capitalize on a mistake with Jeremy and get that knockout.
All right, let's get to picks here for UFC St. Louis, going down Sunday, January 14th, 2018, showing on Fox Sports 1 starting at 10 p.m. Eastern. First fight of the evening, welterweight division, Kamaru Usman against Emil Meek. I'm going to go with the Nigerian Nightmare, Kamaru Usman. I like Emil Meek. I like the Viking aesthetic and everything, being from Norway, but I'm not sure if he'll be able to handle that pressure wrestling from Kamaru.
Yeah, I am as well. I think, like you said, he has that backup wrestling, and I think that right now he's just a guy that his team is focusing on to break into that top 10 and get close to that title shot. So I think it's his time.
Paige Van Zant against Jessie Jess, a.k.a. Jessica Rose Clark, in the women's flyweight division. I'm going to go Jessie Jess. I feel like I said this is a trap. I feel like this is kind of the perfect fight, taking on a fighter in a new weight class who kind of maybe is ducking better competition and has been off for a while. And Rose Clark kind of has some momentum, I think, with that Beck Rawlings victory. So I'm going to go with Jessie Jess in this one.
I'm going to go with Paige. I'm a believer that she is in a better mindset, moved back home, and is excited to join this new division. So I'm going to believe that Paige Van Zant is in her natural division now and going to shine there.
Uriah Hall versus Vitor Belfort in the middleweight division and in the co-main event of the evening. I want to pick Vitor Belfort, but I'm gonna go Uriah Hall in this one. I think just being a little younger, a little faster, a little stronger, I think will make the difference. I hope Vitor looks good. Hope he just doesn't get scorched early, but I think I gotta pick Uriah Hall in this one.
I'm with you too. I want to see a great performance out of Vitor, but my gut tells me that Uriah is in a good place now and going to go in there with a better game plan, like you said, and kind of slow him down.
Jeremy Stephens against the Korean Superboy Doo-Ho Choi. I'm going with the Korean Superboy. I think this guy is, I don't know, he's an assassin. I don't know how to put it. That's what this guy is. I think there's a meme floating around where it says, this guy touches your girlfriend's butt. What do you do? And it just shows, this, really, I mean, he doesn't look like a 26-year-old man, and certainly not a guy that can knock you out with 3 punches.
Right.
And you don't know MMA, you think, I would just smash this, K-pop guy. But then you see him fight and you're like, whoa, I don't know. I think that, I don't know. Maybe that makes him more endearing, but I don't know. I really like this kid. I think he is I don't use this too often on the show, Kayla. You know that. I think he has championship potential. I legitimately think so.
Yeah.
Could be the first ever UFC champion from Asia. Could be. Jeremy Stephens is obviously a veteran. I think we'll go in prepared. He's a guy that certainly has a lot of knockout power, but I'm going to go with the Korean Superboy Doo-Ho Choi.
Yeah, yesterday I, for whatever reason, was going to pick Jeremy Stephens, but I think just after talking with you and going over his experience, his record, I think that like you said, this prediction of him being a future champion, we might have to wait until after his military leave to see that happen. I'm a believer in it too. I think he's just this new evolved mixed martial artist that's going to go in there and be able to frustrate Jeremy and find, that way to get the knockout. I think I see him finishing this fight too. That's my prediction. All
right. She is Kayla Beatty. You can follow her on Twitter at fangirl_MMA. I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. And please like the show or like the video, share it, like obviously MMA World and MMA UK on Facebook. We appreciate all that, and thanks for everybody that tuned in this week. And any other final thoughts as we end the broadcast here, Kayla?
No, thank you guys for watching. We'll be back next week to discuss future fight nights coming up, obviously going over this one. But yeah, I'm excited to watch these fights, and I'll find the beard
yes
video or whatever that controversy. Send that over to you.
Absolutely. And yeah, like you said, we're going to break down this card next week. And of course, you'll be there live in attendance for the Bellator debut on the Paramount Network from the Fabulous Forum in Irvine, California. So we're going to be previewing that fantastic Bellator card as well next week. So for Kayla Beatty, I am Jim Graham. Thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage. Goodbye, everybody.